Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a long overdue follow-up interview with Paige Tucker. This is still one of my favorite stories out there because I believe there are two types of investments. There's wants and there's needs, and this is an absolute need. Anytime there is safety involved, I think it's a massive need. And Paige from Pointman, the ticker symbol is MAPPF, Prostar, and Paige Tucker, CEO and the brains behind the software that does what does it do, Paige?
So it's designed to precisely map where utilities and pipelines are located.
Okay, so I think you told me once there's 35 million miles worth of underground utilities, and there's 2.6 million miles of paved road. Is that accurate?
It puts things into perspective, because people realize, how immense and how vast our above ground infrastructure is, which includes, our roads and our bridges and our highways. But to put things into perspective, 2.6 million miles of paved roads, 35 million miles of buried utilities. So, if you remove the pavement and the dirt and you look below the ground, you could just imagine what that would look like.
Yeah. So, Paige, I want to thank you for coming in to do this follow-up. It's been a hell of a year for microcaps. It's been a hell of a year, or actually been a hell of a couple of years, really, for the small caps and the entire microcap space. It's been a tough time. And a lot of companies have gotten hammered no matter what. It has nothing to do with the company or what they're executing on. It's just the overall market climate. So right now, it hasn't been the best for you know, your company, and I could thousands of other companies, right? But the difference is, I would say Prostar doesn't look anything like it did 12 months ago, right?
Yeah, that's true. We continue to execute. We continue to onboard new clients, not only in the United States, but also in Canada and abroad. We continue to enhance our product, which over the last 12 months, I would say has become a very, very mature product, basically what you call off-the-shelf software. Over the last few years, when customers bought our software, there was always a couple of enhancements or features that they would like us to develop to align closer to their workflow processes and business practices. But we work with some of the largest companies in the world and government agencies and the leading equipment manufacturers globally. And as a result of that, we've refined the product. And now we sell it as is, if you will, to put it in simple terms. And in fact, the clients buy it as is because it meets their workflows and business practices. But then when they realize all of the features that are actually within the software, then they really see the true value.
All right, so I want to play a video here real quickly, because this is this guy's been doing this for 33 years, called Digging Dangers. And I just want to play it real quick.
Gordon, caution tape is now surrounding debris and glass that was once a community hub.
A lot of these pictures, to me, it looks like a war zone, right? I mean, and this is stuff that happens literally every day, right?
Every minute of every working day.
I mean, look at this. This house is gone from a gas explosion.
Unrelated to the stadium. We keep asking city officials, what kind of work was going on back there? What went wrong?
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is that our gas infrastructure that obviously supplies, gases to our houses and our businesses, they have service lines that run from the main lines. And in order to get the service from the main line to the service line, because you can't really create any more main lines, but they're creating a lot of service lines because more houses, apartments, and schools and condominiums, they increase the pressure. It's called maximum operating pressure. And if there's a significant amount of operating pressure, that's a ticking time bomb. If you strike it and it creates a spark, there's a high probability it's going to explode. And that's what you're looking at here.
So I think that this portion, if I'm not mistaken, this guy right here says the line was marked. And I want to make sure, but
This marked line here by at least 9 feet. That is.
they mismarked the line by 9 feet.
Common occurrence. If you recall, when I was going through my previous discussion with you, what they do is they send locators out there. And a lot of times these locators don't have any level of certification. And they use an electromagnetic locate device to locate where the utility line is. Then they use a spray paint can, which to me is archaic, to draw on the pavement or the dirt where that line is, or they'll put a flag down. Now, the challenge is, I don't know if they located the correct line because I don't have any information or data that would provide that level of confidence. So I'm trusting the locator in that paint mark that he located that gas line. And then when the excavator comes out, he has to cross his fingers and hope that where that spray paint mark is actually a true indication of where the gas line is. But we know that it's common occurrence that he may not have located the correct line, and that the gas line could actually be on the other side of the street where it's exactly where the excavator is digging. And so he's digging right where there's a gas line and he's not aware of it.
This is
calling 811, checking with C, and making sure that you're digging in the right spot. We see a lot of this. How are we gonna stop this?
And that's one of the, the safety message that we continually preach and a lot of people in the industry preach constantly is, call before you dig.
I spent the last 47 years of my life trying to stop this from happening, and it really hurts. It hurts deep that people continue not to call 811 before they dig.
That's just part of the problem, not calling 811. Yeah, you can see.
Look at that.
That's not,
You see that?
that's not a pretty sight. That's not a pretty sight, especially, all joking aside, if there's kids that
Right,
are inside the house playing, which happens quite often.
right. I mean, listen, this is volume 33. This guy has been making these digging dangers videos for 33 years, right? This is one incident. He's got thousands of incidents. People die. I mean, it's people get hurt, injured. That's
And
why
that number,
when I say,
that number's only going up every year, just so you know, it's not going down. The
and it
amount of
makes
deaths
sense
occurs
because
is
we're
going
putting
up.
in more miles
Yep.
of underground utilities, right?
Mhm.
On top of other underground utilities.
Yeah,
And
but Tim, the sad thing about it is even the new utilities that we're putting into the ground, we're not mapping their precise locations, which to me is crazy because that's how you reduce those incidences that you're demonstrating there. Okay, maybe we can't do anything based on the existing utilities and pipelines as far as mapping exactly where they are while they're being installed, because they're already in the ground. But today we can change that. And that's part of the technology that we offer. It's so simple if you use our Pointman to just map exactly where it's going into the ground down to the centimeter, including the type of utility, how deep it's in the ground, even the depth of cover. And the fact that we're not doing it, I'm sorry, that's insanity.
is kind of insane, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no excuse. I think if the way I view it, if there is one more death because of this, it makes no sense to me. There should not be, and I want to bring this up. You said you work with some of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
Kiewit, I think, would classify as one of the largest companies in the world.
Well,
Self-performing,
they're definitely the largest infrastructure construction company in North America. That I can
been
tell
around
you.
since 1846. Some crazy, they've been around a long time. Self-performing, self-insured. They're kind of a unicorn in the industry, right? They're that big. But I know that there were two similar sized projects in Denver, Colorado, right? That they were working on where literally, I think on one project, they had somewhere around 147 utility strikes. On the other project, they had 3.
Yeah, those are the exact numbers. And the other project they were using our Pointman solution. And as a result of that, Kiewit has adopted our solution, and they're starting to put us on multiple projects, not just in infrastructure, but also in light rail, water, power. Yeah, it works. And the good news is Kiewit is a major influencer as well, right? I mean, they have the resources to make sure that they have the best business practices and they put the best tools in the hands of their workers to make sure that not only are their workflow processes the most efficient, cost effective, but also we addressed serious safety issues. And believe me, one of their priorities is to make sure that their workers are working in a safe environment.
Right. And in my head, I think to myself, what insurance company or surety company that bonds a job would not want to use your software? Mandate that it is being used on the job. Get a better premium for your insurance, right? I
Well,
mean,
Change is slow, right? Change is slow. I think ultimately the insurance companies will step in and take a look at technology that seriously mitigates risks, not only costly job, I would say associated risks, but also the safety to the public, including, minimizing loss of life. Like you said, how important is that?
Exactly. How do you put a number on that? Right? I mean, if you save one life, what is that worth? And if you take a project of Hewitt's caliber, where they on the previous job hit 147 utilities, and then on the next job you get reduced down to 3, and I think it was user error, if I'm not mistaken, on the 3.
It was user error. We had the opportunity on that project to minimize what we call strikes by 100%. It's not rocket science. If you know where all the utilities and pipelines are located before you start digging, and you know exactly where they are down to the centimeter, and you can share that information with everybody out on the project on their mobile device or their tablet, there's a high probability that, like you said, if you don't have user error, you could avoid 100% of the utilities and pipelines. And
In
that's
real
what our
time.
software do.
Let's talk about that in real time, right? Not, I mean, if you need an engineer to come out and verify, you can do it all through any mobile device, laptop, iPad, mobile phone, right? And it's when you upload what you collect to the cloud, it's real time. There is no waiting a week or 2 weeks for some engineer to come out and do a site visit and sign off. They could do it from their desk at their office.
Well, you brought up a very important point. And just so everyone knows, this is, I would say, what we have been struggling with for several years, which is the process today is you go out and you locate where the utility or pipeline is with an electromagnetic locate device. You put a paint mark on the ground. If you don't trust the paint mark, which a lot of companies don't, they'll send a big hydrovac truck out there. This is a big truck. For those that don't know what it looks like, it almost looks like a big cement truck, but it has a giant hose on it. And what it does is it drills a hole in the ground over top of where the paint mark is, sucks all the dirt out through a giant vacuum system in an attempt to verify if that paint mark's actually correct by exposing the utility or pipeline. And the reason they do that is, as you mentioned, the risk and the liability. If you do hit one of these lines, especially if it's a major petroleum line, fiber optic line, or a gas line, because you can see what happens when you hit a gas line. The problem is with that process, it's very costly, very onerous, very time consuming, not to mention it damages the pavement. But this is what they have to do to minimize the risk of hitting a utility or pipeline. Now, with our solution, we're not really changing much. We utilize the same business practices. So you can go out there with the electromagnetic locate device. You pair it to any standard mobile device like a smartphone or a tablet. And then we utilize, excuse me, a precision GPS receiver, which provides centimeter accuracy. You captured the data with our software. It's down to the centimeter. We can tell you what type of utility is, how deep it's in the ground. And then, as you mentioned, that information is captured on the mobile device and it's available to whoever needs it. It goes up to our cloud, and in a matter of a couple seconds, that information is available to whoever needs it. The current workflow processes and business practices, that information is not available anywhere between maybe 3 days to 3 weeks. Well, by then it's too late. These people, these are contractors out there working. They're not going to sit around and wait 3 days or 3 weeks. They need that information right now. And imagine in that incident you just showed where it was 9 feet away. 9 feet is a big distance. If it's 9 feet, I need to know right now not 3 days or in 3 weeks, because there's too much at risk. So the point of it is we're completely changing very well entrenched business practices that have been in this industry for well over 30 years. But the fact that we can capture data, send it to the cloud, run it through our proprietary algorithms. I mean, we're measuring the curvature of the earth in the matter of seconds. If you're standing on one side of the street or the other side of the street, that can change based on what we call the geoid, which is based on curvature of the earth. The industry didn't believe we could do that in a matter of seconds. So what do we have to do? We had to go out and show this to, as I mentioned, one of the largest infrastructure construction companies in the world, which, by the way, they pride themselves on using the most advanced best practices in the industry. They're called an early adopter. They're an influencer. And then after they tested it, if you recall, because it was in the state of Colorado Department of Transportation, because they owned the project, said, hey, we'd be interested in taking a look at this too. And then about 18 months into testing it, they did mandate it. This is a government agency that mandated our software into state law. Why? Because it significantly reduced the amount of strikes that occur along a state right-of-way, and it's their job to protect the public, the worker, and the environment. And that's what our software is designed to do. But then what we did, which was probably our biggest hurdle, is to go out to the engineering and surveying firms, which historically rely on an engineer or a surveyor to be on site, to be able to determine as a professional if there's enough information that says, yes, that's exactly where that utility or pipeline is located. So we worked with one of the largest engineering surveying firms in the United States that specializes in what's called subsurface utility engineering. Then we worked with one that's one of the largest in Canada and one of the largest in Australia. And it took us anywhere between about 8 months to 18 months with each one of those respective organizations to prove to them that we could get down to centimeter accuracy using standard business practices, do all the calculations in the cloud in a matter of seconds, and provide that information with the highest level of quality and confidence. Now, keep in mind, the value of working with what we call trusted partners like that is they told us, hey, if you change this, or you change this, or you need to move this, or you need to design this. So they gave us all of their knowledge and experience on what we would need to do to change the workflow processes and business practices that have been heavily entrenched, in this industry. And then they all since have adopted it as part of their business practices, which what it does is it gives them a competitive advantage because they're more efficient and they can provide a better deliverable to their clients. And when that happens, their competitors take note. So for example, as I mentioned, we worked with the company that became a client of ours in Australia. And then we recently just signed another one. And I expect as a result, we'll start to have more clients that we acquire in Australia. We just signed one of the largest locating companies in Canada that covers almost all of Canada. So what happens is if you have something that is very disruptive and one client starts using it, the other clients eventually get exposed to it, and then they need it as well. Otherwise, their competitor has a competitive advantage.
I want to highlight two very important things here. Number one, this is a global problem. This is not, we've been talking about 35 million miles worth of utilities just in the United States. We're talking, this is a global issue. Same practices are basically used everywhere, right? So Australia and Canada, if you're questioning whether or not this works internationally, I think your questions have been answered, right? And then what about, and I've been meaning to ask you this, the language of the software. is, I mean, is there does it cover every language? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if it covers every single language, but it covers, I would say, a large majority of them. So what we did, and this is also important for the audience to know, is that about 3.5 years ago, we had already developed the system. In fact, Kiewit was my client, CDOT was the client, but we received a tremendous amount of feedback from them on things that, number one, that they had to have. But then as a result of that, they start using it. They start envisioning what could be. And they start giving you a laundry list of literally what they call wish list items. Like, boy, it'd be great if it could do this. And oh, I don't think you could do this, but man, it would be, fantastic if somehow it could do this. And we write all these things down. Well, what we realized is that the current platform that we had developed and the architecture wouldn't support a lot of the features and the functionality that they were providing to us. But technology had advanced so much in that 3 years that if we re-architected the system and moved away from, at the time we were running on Microsoft Azure, and migrated over onto AWS, that we could in fact address and add in all those features and functionality, which we knew would make us a world leader. But we had to do something which was somewhat unprecedented. We'd have to rewrite every single piece of source code on our current system, not only on the mobile device, but in the cloud, and then migrate over onto AWS. And we knew that was going to take anywhere between 2 to 3 years and cost several millions of dollars. But I made the decision to do it. I said, we got to do it. I mean, if we're the world leader in geospatial technologies and precision mapping, then we have to make sure that we're utilizing the most state-of-the-art technology. And at the time for cloud, and still is today, that was AWS. And part of the move over to AWS is exactly what you're referring to. Today, our system works anywhere in the world, any language, and we can accept any currency. So yes, we consider ourselves today a global company. And as you mentioned, I mean, we've been putting utilities and pipelines into the ground in the United States for, let's say 150 years. That pales in comparison to how long they've been putting utility infrastructure into the ground in other countries, including, Asia and Europe, where yes, the issues we're facing here are far worse in other countries.
So when you think about that, so we're talking about accidental strikes, and they mentioned 811, which is a system that is in place that call before you dig. A lot of people don't do it, right? But there is how many estimated utility strikes per year?
So there's estimated 500,000, so 500,000. That number's going up every single year. And as I mentioned, if you do the math, that equates to every minute of every working day, a utility is hit.
Okay.
And as we know, you hit a utility or pipeline, yeah, you can have an explosion, but sometimes you just have major flooding in neighborhoods where it shuts down the streets. And, I would say almost everyone has experienced this, or all of a sudden your lights go out, and the power's down for several hours, and you're like, I wonder what's going on.
Or the internet.
The internet, yeah, your business is disrupted. You hear on the news all the time about these dangerous petroleum products that are seeping into, our water systems. Well, a lot of the times that's not the oil and gas company's fault. I mean, they have safety measures in place to make sure that it doesn't happen. It can be the result of just poor information that's being shared with the construction company, and they end up digging into a pipeline that they didn't even know was there. And according to the records that they have, it's not supposed to be there. So, unfortunately, the 811 system, as you mentioned, which is, it's law. Every state has an 811 system. By law, you have to call in to the 811 center and provide where you're going to be digging that will, are doing construction that will require digging activities. But that system is broken and it's not working. And as I said, the numbers are only going up. The amount of deaths that we have is only going up. And so it's time for a change. And the change that I'm talking about is digital transformation. Almost every industry in the world has gone through a digital transformation. The sharing of digital information makes everything so much faster, so much more efficient, and in this case, would make it so much safer. And we're leading the charge. And we're starting to get that early adoption by the major influencers. We're now working with some of the largest equipment manufacturers that have recognized the value of Pointman and that everything is going to move to this digital transformation. We're starting to get buy-in at the government level. As I mentioned, we had one state that mandated our software. Now we have several states looking at the exact same model that Colorado introduced, that I'm in discussions with. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to have more states that move over to that same model. So sometimes change is very slow to happen, but once it starts to happen, then it happens quickly. And I could use, many examples. I'll use an example. You used to go to your doctor's office and you'd have to fill out 10 forms, and then he'd send you next door. You'd have to fill out 10 more that were exact same forms you just filled out. I mean, we're all used to that. It's like, I just filled these out. Or you go back next week for a revisit and you got to fill the forms out again. Well, I don't know if you notice, you go to the doctor's office now, most of them have an iPad, right?
Right.
And you're clicking buttons. You don't have to fill anything out. Well, think of it that way. That's what we're doing to transform the construction industry. Construction industry is one of the last industries to transform to digital. They're known as a laggard. They're ranked number 50 in the world. And that's basically our vision, and our goal is to transform the construction industry to digital. We've designed the system. We're onboarding large construction companies, engineering surveying firms, government agencies. We're starting to actually move into other verticals too. Like, we've just onboarded some of the largest mining companies in the world. Mining has the same issue. As some people say, mining, why would somebody way out in the middle of nowhere need to know where the utilities and pipelines are? Population creep. Cities and towns and villages are actually getting closer to those mining communities. Well, if you're a village or a town or municipality or city, you need utilities and pipelines, to power your house and the internet, and you need water. So these mining operations are actually getting closer to where large population centers are. And as a result of that, they also need to know where the utilities and pipelines. But we're bringing on municipalities, universities, anyone that's impacted by not knowing where utilities and pipelines are located. We provide significant value to them. So we're getting traction, and I'm pretty confident that at some point here in the near future, we'll hit what we call that inflection point. And it's not just based on the adoption rates, based on, other tailwinds that are pulling us into the market. I'll give you an example.
They just recently had a change about those paint marks on the ground, right?
Yeah.
And that change was essentially what?
That's what I was gonna, excuse me. You got me all choked up when you talk about that. No, all kidding aside. So the American Society for Civil Engineers, they pretty much established the standards and the guidelines that the rest of the industry adheres to. And in fact, whatever guidelines and standards are set here in the United States is adopted in many parts of the world. But we're kind of like the leader. So 20 years ago, the American Society for Civil Engineers came out with the standards for identifying where utilities and pipelines are located. And it ties into the 811 system. So you could send a locator out there, you'd put a paint mark on the ground, which would indicate where a utility or pipeline was. but there was no geospatial technology associated to it, right? So there's nothing that told you where that was geospatially. So then they would send a surveying crew out there, and they would survey in the paint mark. And that was accepted as survey grade data of where a utility or pipeline was. Then they would bring the data back to the office, and they would import it into their system of record, which was either a CAD system, computer aided design system, or a GIS system, geographic information system. And that became survey grade accepted data of where a utility or pipeline was. Well, we work closely with the American Society for Civil Engineers, and we are the first mover in the industry with Pointman. And because of the equipment manufacturers we're working with, the large clients, the engineering surveying firms, they realized that through modern technology, we could significantly improve knowing where a utility or pipeline is located. And as a result of that, 20 years later, they've changed their standards. And this is big for Prostar and for our Pointman solution. So today, the way it works is a paint mark is no longer considered an indication of where a utility or pipeline is located. What they want is, I'll just layman's terms, I'll say they want the proof that that utility or pipeline was located. Number one, they want the geospatial data, which means you have to have a precision GPS receiver to capture the geospatial location. Then they want the method by which it was captured, meaning what type of device did you use? So if it's an electromagnetic cable and pipe locating device, what type of device is it? What type of utility is it? How deep is it in the ground? What's the depth of cover? They also want a photo to know that you were actually out there, and they can verify that you were there. And they also want a digital sketch. Well, that's everything that we've developed into our system. But most importantly, you don't have to have an engineer or surveyor on site. This data can go from the device up to the cloud, and then the engineer can be notified, hey, we just located a utility or pipeline. You can go on to your desktop computer, you can review the data, and then as a qualified professional, you can determine if that is survey grade. So Pointman is now basically part of the new standards and guidelines. And the way that we have been doing it has kind of been thrown out now. So that's a major change and a tailwind for Prostar.
And these are the types of things that force change. I mean, because this isn't as simple as you buy a piece of equipment, you install it, you're all good. Now you're kind of up to date. This is a process. This is software. So when you make a change with the software, that means there's going to be employee training. There's going to be all this stuff that sounds like a big headache, right? Which can make, even though there's the need to change, the want isn't necessarily there.
Listen, we're human, and our human behavior is based on routine. We like familiarity, and we're not real big on change. But what we don't realize is, we've made thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of changes in our lifetime. And the majority of the time, the reason that we change, it's for the better. But it's a giant leap to make that change. It's right. It's as simple as that. I mean, I'll be aging myself a little bit here, but I remember when texting first came out, and why are you texting me? Why don't you just call me? Right. Well, we all text now. We all do. Right? I think all of us have very strong thumbs because we all text. And if someone calls me, I'm like, why don't you just text me? I don't have time to pick up the call. No, it's true, right?
That is very true. I mean, these things that make us more efficient, right? Safer. I mean, yes, the change is difficult.
Yep.
Or challenging, but once the change is made, it's like you look back and go, man, how did we ever do this? The old-
Uber, I think I explained this once before. I remember traveling, and it wasn't that long ago. And I was traveling with a account executive, and we were up in Denver. And I said, well, we better get to the next appointment. Let's grab a cab. He goes, I'm not gonna grab a cab. I'm gonna order Uber. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of this this Uber. Are you sure? And he goes, oh yeah, trust me. So he orders an Uber, and the next thing you know, he looks at his phone and he goes, oh, it's red Toyota, and he'll be here in 2 minutes. And he's over on 24th Street. And I go, how do you know that? And he goes, I can see it on my mobile device. Well, 2 minutes later, the red Toyota shows up, takes us to the appointment. And then we had another appointment, and I'm like, hey, we better, once again, better get a taxi. He goes, I already called Uber. They'll be here in 4 minutes. To go downstairs right now. It's a blue SUV. Well, by the end of the day, I'm like, hey, can you show me how to download that app on my phone? And now I'm one of the, biggest proponents for Uber, and I'll probably never use a cab again. But oddly enough, if you take a cab, they've adopted the whole model of Uber now, right? Where before you would, if you remember, you'd call a cab and you had an appointment or you had to be at the airport and you're wondering, where's the cab? Right? You see other cabs going by. Maybe that's my cab, because you don't know, right? Then the next, you're going to be late for the airport and you call the cab company and they're like, oh, we don't have that in our system. I'll send one over right now. And you don't know if you're going to wait another hour. So it completely transformed the industry, but it also made the cab companies change.
Right.
Which brings up another funny story. So a lot of people say, well, you're a small company and you designed the system that's going to change the entire industry. How come a bigger company didn't do this? Well, the big companies are never the innovators, right? Like, Hilton and Marriott didn't come up with the concept of Airbnb. The taxi companies didn't come up with the concept of Uber. Why? Because it completely disrupts and changes their business model. And again, no one wants to change. But number one, one thing I can say unequivocally is that the utility, pipeline industry, construction industry as a whole is now going through a digital transformation.
Right. It's happening. I mean, to think that we have 35 million miles of underground utilities and don't have a map of them, a digital map of where they're exactly located is in this day and age is like scary, right? I mean, it is scary that we don't have that. And there's no excuse for it. The longer that it takes to make this change, the more deaths that occur. That's on everybody. It's the way I feel. It's like, here's a solution. This isn't, some bullshit, fluff piece. This is real stuff. This is talking about, satellite constellations of satellites and where they're at, where they're located, the curvature of the earth. A lot of work has gone into this to come up with this solution, right? That saves lives, ultimately saves lives, saves time, saves money, right?
Absolutely.
So those are three pretty big things, I think, in my head. And it makes us more efficient. Those 500,000 utility strikes a year, let's not just talk about the injuries and death. What does that cost us? Somewhere, I think the estimate is somewhere between 30 and 61 billion dollars a year.
Yeah, there was, excuse me, for years the estimate was more than 30 billion. A recent study says it's north of 60 billion that it costs our economy. But in addition to that, and this is something that we have to take into consideration. And it's not one thing, as you mentioned, that's going to change. It's a combination of several different factors that when they come close together, it creates that pull. And it's like all of a sudden everybody wakes up and says, okay, it's time to change. And one of the key indicators and catalysts will be the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. And the reason I mention that is several hundreds of billions, it's probably in the $300 to $400 billion range, is specifically earmarked to improve our roads, our bridges, our highways, but also earmarked to repair and replace our water systems and sewage systems, which in many areas of the country are over 100 years old, and also to expand on broadband in rural areas. And this is important. I want everyone to understand this, is that our roads, bridges, and highways, and our sewage systems and our water systems and our fiber optic systems, they're connected. So I have to dig through the roads to get through the water systems and to get to the sewage systems and to expand on broadband. But also, if I'm just working on a road and I'm digging up the road and I'm expanding it or I'm moving it, there's buried utilities. That's where the majority of utilities are buried, is either underneath the roads or along the roads. Okay. So anytime we do construction, either above the ground or below the ground, there's a high probability that if we don't know where these utilities and pipelines are, we're going to have a significant amount of damage. Well, if we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, that's a significant amount of money. We're going to incur a lot of damages unless we know where those utilities and pipelines are buried. And it might shock people when I make this statement that you would think that the utility and pipeline companies have good records and accurate on where their utilities and pipelines are buried. But the fact of the matter is they don't. They don't. So they can't even provide good information to the construction companies on where the utility lines are buried. So then we have to depend on the 811 system and sending these locators out there that put, these spray paint marks on the ground that we know aren't accurate. So the fact of the matter is we have to look at a better solution. Well, we have designed a system. It's now proven. We work with all the major equipment manufacturers. We're working with the largest companies.
And let's talk about Trimble, right?
Yep.
Elf. Name you just announced one radio something yesterday, right?
Yeah, so what's happening right now is that, and this is important too, this is another one of those catalysts, those pull factors. So the equipment manufacturers, well, historically there was never a GPS system embedded into the locate device because they were just putting the paint marks on the ground. Okay. So as modern technology evolves, then the equipment companies were like, hey, if we put a GPS receiver on the locate device, we can capture geospatially where the utility is. And by the way, we have the patents on all this, which number one is important.
I was going to bring that up.
But it also proves that we are the pioneer. We are the first mover in the market. Otherwise, you can't get the patents. But this is
how many patents do you have, Paige?
21.
And what are they called? Are they called pioneer patents?
They're called pioneer patents because no one was even remotely even close to what it is that we had patented. But
okay,
even if you set the patents aside, this is exciting for Prostar. The fact that you have equipment manufacturers now embedding GPS devices into their locate devices means that they realize that there's a major change coming, and we're not just going to put paint marks on the ground. We're going to capture the geospatial location. Okay. Right.
Yep.
And so that's a significant change from the equipment manufacturers. And so the first one that did it was Vivex Metrotech, and we integrate seamlessly into the Vivex devices. And now you're going to see other electromagnetic cable and pipe equipment manufacturers, because once one does it and all of a sudden they start outselling the others, then the other one has to do it, and then the other one comes along, and the next thing you know, they're all doing it, which is great for us because we have the software that's designed to capture that information. But once again, it's a key indicator of the change that's coming to market. But you mentioned Trimble. Trimble's one of the largest geospatial technology companies in the world. We're a business partner, and we integrated into their GPS receivers. As a result of that, then all the other GPS equipment manufacturers send us their equipment. In fact, one of the largest in the world is Leica. And Leica contacted me about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and said, hey, we want to do the same that you're doing with Trimble. And so actually tomorrow they said they'll be shipping out their devices. Now there's two ways to integrate. I mean, you can do what's called ad hoc integration, which you can just figure out the streaming data that's coming out of their system. Or you can have a seamless tight integration, which means we have to work closely with the manufacturer. They have to provide their SDK, their software development kit, so that anytime if they do a change within their software, it automatically updates and notifies our software. And that's the only way that we'll do an integration with a hardware equipment manufacturer, is to have a business partnership with them. But what this creates for us is, number one, not only does it indicate the change that's coming to this industry, but by working with these equipment manufacturers, each one of them have, thousands and tens of thousands of customers globally. It creates a significant distribution network for us. And we're becoming known as like the best de facto software out there that runs these devices in order to capture the data. And in fact, a lot of companies have tried to knock off what we're doing, and they think it's easy. And you're just going out there and collecting the data. No, there's a lot that goes in to what we're doing. I can't even mention names, but I have a couple equipment manufacturers that tried to knock off what they're doing, and they've put their hands up in the air and have given up and said, we're just going to move over to Pointman.
So, we've packed in a ton of information in this follow-up. I mean, there is, let's talk about the company itself, leadership, and what you have going on there.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that we've done is that we keep, I'll call it plugging away. We keep persevering, and we keep onboarding more clients, more equipment manufacturers. As I mentioned, we're in discussions with more government agencies. We're moving into other countries. It hasn't happened as quickly as I would have expected, but I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm probably overly optimistic. To change an industry is a monumental task. And it happens one customer at a time. It happens one equipment manufacturer at a time. It happens one government agency at a time. But every day we're making progress. So where we are is, as I had mentioned, a couple of years ago, I brought on Kiewit, brought on CDOT. And that took anywhere between, 12 to 18 months to get to the point where we had proven to them that this actually works. And again, they gave us, all types of things that we need to change. So when you bring on two large organizations like that, and as a small company, it was all hands on deck. We're just working for Kiewit and for CDOT at the time. Then we brought on the three large engineering surveying firms, as I discussed. And during this process, we're also rewriting every single piece of source code that we have so that we can migrate over to AWS. Then once we completed all the testing with them and they adopted it, then we said, okay, we need to start ramping up our sales, because that's what everyone wants to see. And within our organization, we have a term, we call it adding logos. It's our number one mantra now, add logos. In fact, our goal by the end of the year is to add 100 logos. And right now we're at 30. So we went from 2 customers, then we went to 5 with the engineering surveying firms. And then over about the last 18 months, we have moved up to 30 logos. Now, might say, well, it took you several years to get to 30. You know, how are you going to get to another 70 with only, 3/4 remaining in the year? Well, to bring on 2 customers was a huge task because they didn't believe that we could do what we said we could do. Then to go from 2 to 4 is still a difficult task, but it's much easier to get to 4 than it was to 2. Then to get to 8 was much easier than 4. Why? Because the software is becoming more mature. The market's changing, and we also have more credibility in the market as well. And we're also working with more equipment manufacturers. So all of these things are major components that come into onboarding more clients. Then you go from 8 to 16, which was much easier. And then to go from 16 to 32 will even be easier. I mean, I've no doubt in my mind over the next few days, we'll announce we brought on 2 more. And then to go from 32 to 64 becomes much easier. And to go from 64 to 128 gets easier, and so on and so forth. And then what happens as a software company, at some point you'll hit an inflection point. One day we'll have 1,000 customers, and we'll look back and go, man, do you remember how hard it was just to get to 5?
And I'm going to go back to, we haven't talked about insurance companies. Insurance companies, I do think at some point are going to take notice of this. There are actually, I see several ways that where the inflection point could actually be if you're the general on a job. Most generals, unlike Kiewit, are overseers of the job, right? They get all the subcontractors to bid out the job, the whole deal. If the general says, look, you want to bid the job, fine. Just so you know, if you're digging into the ground, this is the utility software system that we're using. And if you're going to work on this job so that we're all on the same page in real time, you're going to use it too. Right?
It's a great point you brought up. And I mean, it's as simple as this. I mean, imagine a vehicle without headlights. I'm not going to insure it. Okay. Or wasn't that long ago that vehicles didn't have seatbelts. If you were an equipment manufacturer and you were selling cars that didn't have a seatbelt, it's not going to go real well. Okay. Now, it doesn't have to be Pointman, but I will tell you that within a few years, every company is going to be using a software similar to ours. Okay. In fact, there's lots of companies popping up now that are developing software similar to Pointman. And that doesn't depress me at all, because before I was the lone soldier out there, okay? Because here's what happens is that when you go present something that makes sense to a company, and it could be a competitor, they're not going to sign up right away. They're going to step back and they're going to say, let's see what else is out there on the market, because obviously we want the best product at the best price, right?
Right.
And we have companies that are coming to us that said, oh, actually, we were sold on this concept by your competitor, but they don't have what you have. And actually, Tim, this is important, because when we were first selling the system and we were running on Microsoft Azure, our starting price was north of $100,000 a year. Okay. By re-architecting it and moving over to Azure, we actually start out now at under $6,000. We have municipalities that are using our solution and paying us under $6,000 a year to manage the entire city, not just what's below ground. They're using our system as their GIS system of record to manage, their manholes and their park benches and trees and fire hydrants. So this is a full comprehensive GIS system, of which I would say that probably 80% of all municipalities, not only in the United States, but around the world, they need a GIS system. And we are positioned ourselves very well to be their system of record. In fact, there's about 50,000 municipalities in the United States with a population of under 50,000. And they're all going to go digital. Right now, everything they're doing is maps. I mean, if you think about it, and again, this is slow to adopt, slow to change. You think of a government agency, anytime I want something from the government, sometimes they're asking me, what's your fax number? Like they're still using fax machines, right? I mean, I know it's kind of humorous, but it just goes to show on one side of the scale, you'll have someone like Kiewit that says, oh yeah, we'll give anything a shot because we always want to make sure that we're utilizing the best practices. On the other side of the scale, you got government agencies, everything's on paper, and they're asking what your fax number is, right? They're all going to go digital. And I mean, we're positioned very well to capitalize on that. And I think, as I mentioned, things moved a lot slower than I had expected, but things are starting to move much faster now.
And I see
I'm
that.
very confident we'll hit our 100 logos this year.
I see that, and we could use an example of a small company. What is it called? Landmark, I think it was.
Yeah.
In Colorado that did a big job for, I think it was what, 7,000 miles worth of gas line detection or something, or was for
The main lines,
for a
yeah.
big,
One of the largest gas distribution companies in the United States. And they were awarded the contract because of Pointman, and they only had a few employees. And so the gas company really liked what they were presenting and how they were going to do it. But how are you going to do it? And you're such a small company. And they said, because of the technology. And when they realized how efficient, how accurate, and how quick you could collect data with our system, they were awarded the contract. And
right.
really,
They proved it. It's not like they got low bid and, hey, they screwed up. They threw in way too low of a number and they got the contract. It wasn't an accident. These guys had to prove that they could do it within the timeline that was required to get this.
we could segue into all types of things, but that you just brought up an interesting point. So the reason that it even became known is that, and again, within the infrastructure bill, there's going to be millions of miles of fiber optic going into the ground. Okay. Now, when you're putting fiber optic into the ground, you better know where all the other utilities and pipelines are located, or you're going to have serious problem on your hands. Okay. So the city of Boulder, there was a company, I won't mention their name, that was installing fiber optic. And when you're installing fiber optic, there's a high probability that you're going to be drilling, because you have to lay conduit down and then you pull the fiber optic through. There's a high probability that you could be drilling through other utilities and pipelines, including water systems, excuse me, and sewage systems. And because you're drilling through them, it plugs them up temporarily. But eventually, because you drilled into them, you've impacted the integrity of the line. Eventually, products will start seeping out of it. Water's one thing, sewage is another.
So is another, right?
Okay. So they were drilling through the lines, and the city of Boulder said, no more fiber optic going into the ground until you can prove to us that you know where all the other utilities and pipelines are located. Of course, the fiber optic company is, well, how are we going to do that? So they put out an RFP, a request for proposal, and Landmark, the little company you were talking about, said, we could locate all the utilities and pipelines, and we can do it down to the centimeter, and we can do it quickly, like in a few weeks. Of course, they're like, how in the hell are you going to do that? Well, we have this software called Pointman, and that's exactly what they did. And what we have now is an example of a case study that you watch. Once all this fiber optic starts going into the ground, almost every city is going to have an issue of all of the utilities and pipelines being hit as a result of trying to put all this fiber optic down. And then they're going to stop and they're going to go, hey, we got to figure out where all these utilities and pipelines are. And eventually it'll work its way up to the government level, because the government's going to all of a sudden realize that the utilities and pipeline companies don't know where their utilities are, and that the 811 system isn't working. And there's got to be a better way of doing it. And once again, I like to emphasize, I'm working with the largest infrastructure construction company in North America. I'm working with the largest equipment manufacturers in the world. I've got a government agency that already mandated our software in a state at the Department of Transportation level. And we're influencing guidelines and standards on acceptable data. So we are well positioned, as I mentioned, to be the de facto software when all of a sudden the US government realizes, maybe we're not going to put all this money out there until you guys can figure out where these utilities and pipelines are, because it's all, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're going to see more deaths.
You're going to see more deaths. You're going to see more damage, right? Like digging dangerous. You're going to see more. We're going to see more damage. The $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill is going to cost us $10 trillion.
Yeah, I can't, obviously I don't have a crystal ball and I can't put my thumb on it, but I actually think that there could be just as much damage as occurred as the amount of money that they're spending to try and resolve the issue that we have. So, the sum of that is zero. I mean, it's like we're going to have just as many problems as we are benefits from the infrastructure bill and I'm talking about specifically for critical infrastructure, right? Roads, bridges, highways, utilities, and pipelines. But yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but they're going to have a major, major mess.
Unless we make some changes, right?
Well, I can tell you already, and I'm hearing this from some very large engineering surveying firms, that there's some projects at some state levels that are like multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects that they will not let the project kick off unless they're implementing the new ASCE guidelines and standards. So again, there's a word out there called the perfect storm. All of this stuff comes together that creates the perfect storm to pull a solution like Pointman into the market, because they're going to do their homework. They're going to want to know who you're working with. A lot of these government agencies, like, for example, some will be using Trimble, some will be using radio detection, some will be using 3M, some will be using Vivex, some will be using Leica, some will be using Bad Elf. And they're not going to tell anybody, oh, you have to use this specific solution with this specific equipment, right? We're agnostic. That's why we positioned ourselves that we work with all of them. So you really don't have to change anything. All you have to do is download our software and you're up and running.
So,
and it takes a matter of few hours to train them how to use it. So yes, are we disruptive to the industry? Absolutely. Are we disruptive to government agencies and all these other companies' current workflow processes? No, it just fits right in.
So
no, it's a no-brainer.
Right. It is a no-brainer. So and actually I'm actually going onto your site right now because you have an app. You have an app in the Google Play Store. You have Apple in the Apple Store as well, right?
Yeah, you can just go to, in fact, the way that we have developed it is you can actually just go to the Apple Store, or you can go to Google Play. You can download our software and you can utilize it on a trial period for 2 weeks. We want people to use it. And then you can acquire just the mobile app, which we sell for only $495, works anywhere in the world, integrates with GPS equipment, the electromagnetic cable and pipe locating devices. But obviously you're limited to the amount of data that you can store on the device. But you can also export it into other systems of record. But then we have our cloud and mobile solution, which of course is both mobile and cloud, unlimited data storage, works anywhere in the world. And this will actually, this will run an organization, this will run a company, this will run a city, this will run a government agency, and you can start running. We have zoos, universities,
any kind of city within a city, marine bases, military bases. I mean, it's limitless.
It's endless.
Right? Limitless.
It's literally endless. And when you think about how big this market is globally, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're all going to go digital. It's inevitable. Like, I'm not, again, I want to clarify that doesn't mean they're all going to go with Pointman, but I can say with a high level of confidence, this entire industry is going digital. And we're well positioned to capitalize on that. And I'm glad there's competition in the market. It proves that we're not wrong and that it's happening. I mean, you could
But
probably
those let's just talk about it for a second. It may not be Prostar, but let's go back to the patents for a second. 21 of them, pioneer patents. I mean, yeah, it's great that there are other companies starting up, because I have to believe in my mind that somewhere along the line in their process, they're probably infringing on your patent.
Yeah, we're actually, I don't like to put too much weight on this, because the most important thing is have the best product, be first mover in the market, provide the most value, have the best customer support, and you're going to win the majority of the market share anyways, right?
Right.
And that literally is how we operate. But in addition to that, it doesn't hurt to have patents. Number one, it validates that you are the pioneer. Otherwise, someone else would have the patents, right? But we are in the process of prosecuting our patents. What I mean by that is, like, we're in court. In fact, the company that we're going after first tried to invalidate our patents, and last week the invalidation was dismissed, which obviously swings the pendulum into our favor. But it's court system, right? Several more
Right.
steps to go. But the judge did basically mandate that we go through arbitration and settle it.
All right, we're gonna go back to the patents in a second, and what you have going on there. But let's talk about, because we have an opportunity to bring in someone that has a very strong background in software companies, right? As a turnaround guy and making them profitable and growing sales, right? And you happen to have this person, which you're going to introduce, available to us right now. So we're going to hop there. So why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, the best way for me to explain it, Tim, is that, the market is ready for a transformation. We have a mature product. We have credibility in the market. We're working with all the major, equipment manufacturers. So we're poised to capitalize. And what everybody wants to hear is, when are we going to start seeing your sales and your revenue ramping up? So what I did is, as I always do, I go out and see if I can find the best of the best with a proven track record that knows more than I do, that has more experience, that can help us ramp our sales. And I found that person. I initially brought him in as a consultant for 90 days just to see if he could do what he has done, historically. He has a proven track record and he has a proven system. So I brought him in the fall of last year, and he puts a system in place and it's working. So then what I said is, hey, we want to bring you on full time. Would you be willing to do that? But everyone should know that I said, but I'm only going to pay you half of what I've been paying you, and the rest you need to take in stock options. Why do I do that? So they have a vested interest. They're not just doing it for the paycheck, and it shows conviction on their part that they can move the bar, because if he does, he can make a lot more money than if I was paying him. So it's win-win. And his name is Pat Clausen, and I think we should bring Pat in now so that the audience can understand who Pat is.
I'm bringing him in right now.
Let's bring Pat in.
There he is.
How we doing?
Comes Pat. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Don't mean to put you on the spot, but we're being interviewed by Tim, and we've kind of segued over into sales. And I was talking about how the product is now mature. We're starting to see tailwinds in the market. We're working with the majority of the major equipment manufacturers. We've got the largest infrastructure construction company in North America. They know that we have a mandate in the state of Colorado. We're just poised well. But what every investor wants to know is, when are we going to see a ramp up in sales and revenue? And I said, so what I did is I went out and tried to find, as I always do, the best of the best, the brightest of the brightest, to come in and help me with sales and marketing. And so we brought you in as a consultant. I knew you had a proven track record, but you had a formula that you put into place. And after 90 days, you started moving the bar. And so we brought you in full time. And I think just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, the system you have in place, and what you see as far as the future of Prostar.
Sounds good. Well, first of all, good to meet you. My background has been as a growth CEO or a board member for the last 20 plus years at different software companies around the world. And when I got introduced to Paige, we said, let's take a look at what you have. And, you know, I was incredibly impressed after I did the research on the industry, the potential for the software sales in the industry, the changes that were happening in the industry. I said, okay, we got to do something with this. And how do we do something that allows us to grow and measure it? And we built out a structure after all that research and a sales team and an organization that's focused and measured daily on growth. And it's really basic. You know, we drive the initial goal was, how do you go from a very manual sales process into one where we can have a salesperson that has 20 new fresh discovery calls with fresh prospects every single week. You know, good solid 4 to 5 brand new prospects every week. Started in January, and we've achieved that so far. And what rolls from that kind of an effort, we measure it daily. Every morning at 7:30 in the morning, we're on the phone going through it with the sales team. What did you say you're going to do? What did you actually do? And then that starts to move from discovery into demo and into actual pipeline. So we've been creating opportunities, and we measure that on a weekly, monthly basis. So we're down to metrics that say, how many deals do we need to quote a week? How many do we need to close a week? And how much new pipe do we need to create every single week? And it's very, very measured. And that has shown us results almost in the first 30 days.
So let me, you mentioned that you were with software companies for the last 25 years. Any of them publicly traded?
2, I ran a company called CyberGuard that was a NASDAQ company. It was a NASDAQ turnaround in the early 2000s. We grew that from around 11 million in revenue to around 65 in 5 years and sold that to a competitor. Next one I did was on the London AIM. So we built a software company by rolling up 4 companies around the world, took it out on the AIM and ran that for 2.5 years, and then left there.
Okay. So you've got a proven track record.
I do. And, you know, what I think is important about, particularly in early stage, and where a lot of the early stage companies, I've run several of them and I've consulted with a bunch, is getting your brain wrapped around what has to happen on a daily basis and then measuring daily. It's hard getting out there in a brand new industry and a brand new product with, you know, without enough existing running using customers. So that's a process that you got to get really dialed in on. You have to have your people tight. You have to have tight scripts. You got to refine on a daily basis, and you got to measure on a daily basis.
So you come across as kind of a no-nonsense guy. Would that be an accurate statement?
That would be very accurate. Pretty straightforward guy.
And I think that's fantastic, right? So you know, one of the things I love about Paige from the first time I met him was his ego doesn't get in the way, right? He understands that as this company scales, he probably didn't have the skill set to take it from here all the way to the finish line, right? He's not afraid to bring in people that I think help and can mentor him in a lot of different areas, right?
That's if I can elaborate on that's true. I have no issue, and I say this, you know, honestly, I have no problem bringing in people that are a lot smarter and a lot brighter than I am. In fact, and I'm sure Pat would attest to this, is that, you know, my expertise is getting a company to where it is. Like starting with an idea, writing patents. I call it Band-Aids and bubble gum. Do whatever you got to do to get it to a certain point. Bring on some big customers, but to build a multi-billion-dollar organization that scales globally, you don't want me learning how to do that through trial and tribulation. What you want to do is you want to bring executives in that have that experience, and you can simply look back historically and see their proven track record. It's pretty easy to measure success. And then hopefully your product and the solution that you have developed excites them enough that they see the value and opportunity in it, which in itself is a testimony of where Pointman is today. Because as you know, Navasa Dasan, who's our chief operating officer, is the former CTO of Sun Microsystems, which he's got our operations down. And we've developed the system, as I mentioned, it's mature. We know it can scale globally. So the next step is, how do we execute and significantly increase our sales and revenue? Well, let's go find somebody that has that experience and bring them in. And that's where we landed on Pat.
Yeah, and look, I'm a lucky guy, right? Paige has been working hard on this for years, right? Building out the technology, seeing the future, creating patents to protect what he'd built. And I'm here at a time when the industry is starting to wake up and realize that they need to move forward, right? And the simple math is, look, if you've got two companies bidding on a big infrastructure product, one of them's doing it the old way and the other one is completely lit up with Pointman, one of them's going to be faster, they're going to be more accurate, they're going to be much less expensive, and they're going to have many, far fewer, accidents with accidental, drillings or whatever that might be, or breaking lines, and less risk to life. Frankly, that's just the math. So the exercise today is, we don't have to prove to people what we do. We've already done that through our patent portfolio. What he's built has been documented. It's proven centimeter accuracy. So you've got this unbelievable platform that's well thought out, that is mature, not just trying to figure out how to get out there. And you got people who recognize it as the leader in the world. Now we just got to get it going. That's it.
Which is exciting, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
So let me ask you, Pat, when you really took a hard look at this, and I'm sure you did your own due diligence, you probably had other people. If you were in the software business, I have to imagine you had somebody from the software business take a look at the software and say, what do you think? Right?
We did 4 things, to your point. So I reached out and spoke to some financial analysts that cover the space, that cover growing software companies, and got their view on the company and the tech. I reached out to probably a half a dozen different industry analyst firms from around the world and got all their analysis on the space. And then went through and took a look at the technology and software myself. And the last thing we did was a very, very deep competitive look. And within the competitive look, we're looking for anybody who's out there thinking that they're doing what we're doing. I want to know what their technology capabilities are, what they think their value props are, what their pricing models are, what their verticals and their use cases are. And after we got to all that, came back to, look, the industry analysts aren't covering this well enough yet. They're still just talking about the old hardware stuff. So this is an up and coming from an analyst coverage perspective, which is good news. It's still early, it's still greenfield. There are some big companies, but the big companies aren't really doing the software piece. That's not their expertise, they're not doing it. And there's 5 or 6 other ones around the world that are very small, they're undercapitalized, and they don't have the patent portfolio. So you've got a company that is sitting at the pointy end of a spear in a time when it is perfect for big organizations to be adopting, and as one brand new customer said, creating Google Maps for the underground. And that's what's happening, right? And Pointman is the one leading that charge because they're the best position to do it.
What Paige and I were just talking about, and I actually see several ways where this becomes such a snowball effect, especially in the construction industry. I have a construction background, so I know, a new tool comes out, and once you get it on the job site, you see it in action. People start asking, where'd you get that? Right. Like cordless tools. When cordless tools came out, it was like, wow, what the hell? Where did you get that? And now cordless tools are everywhere. right?
You wouldn't buy the alternative. Yeah.
Right. So I look at it and say to myself that there are several paths where literally the engineer could spec Pointman on the job saying no substitute, right?
Right.
You got the general who typically just oversees the job, hires all the subs, says, if you want to bid the job and you're going to be digging underground, we're using this utility software system. And so that we're all on the same page, you're going to need to have that as well. Right. So that's another like mandate. And then you've got insurance companies, if they ever wake up and see what Pointman has here, then you get insurance companies or surety companies that say, hey, you can lower your premiums on this job
Dramatically.
right?
Yeah. And that's what we say we do, right? I mean, we get right to the point. Why are you here sitting in front of me? You know, the prospect says to us, so we save lives and we save money. That's what we do. And that
Save
resonates.
lives, save time, save money.
There you
Those
go.
are three big things in my mind, right?
You know, I think the other major driver is just going to be pure economics, right? People have been doing things the same way for a long time. But when you're bidding on projects, and they are bidding on highway projects, construction projects, whatever that might be, if one of those vendors is lit up with Pointman and the other one's not, when that bid process comes together, one of them is going to have a different time frame. It's going to be less expensive. It'll be done faster, and it's hard to compete with that. Then people start to say, wait a second, how are they doing that? We need to do that too, right?
So one of the biggest things in construction is be on time and below budget. I'm pretty sure that's usually how
Universal.
it works.
Yeah.
Right? On time, below budget. And if you're hitting utilities and they shut down the job site, that's going to make the on time portion more challenging, right? Under budget, same thing. So this is, to me, is such a no-brainer. It's on so many levels. I think of OSHA, most powerful organization on a job site. They can shut it down in a second if they see any kind of safety issue, right? I could actually see being certified through OSHA, because the guys on the job site have to take OSHA training every year to maintain their OSHA card. Why not have a certification program just like they do for a forklift? The guy's not a forklift driver, but in a pinch, you need a forklift driver. He's certified. He can hop on the forklift. Why not have the guy certified to be able to identify underground utilities?
It's a beautiful idea, right? And it's so true. That's a great idea. I love that.
I look at this as, you know, I talked to Paige. There are wants and needs. And anytime there's a safety component where you save lives, that is a need. It's
not
clearly a need, right? So that's what makes me believe that at some point, and I don't know when, I am shocked that it's taken as long as it is taking for the industry to recognize this is a solution, people. The 500,000 utility strikes, accidental utility strikes that cost the country billions and billions of dollars.
30 billion, I believe. Yeah.
Right? Can be avoided. That's there is a solution out there. We don't have to accept it.
You look down the road, you can't imagine 5 years from now, everyone not using it, right? And that's not a long way away. That's Microsoft style growth, right? That's like the world said, that's a darn good idea. We need to do that. Not one, we need to do that, to your point.
Right. And when and Paige is seeing that now with the manufacturers of the products, right? So it's going to start there. But you're getting more and more manufacturers that want to open up their equipment for you to install your software. I mean,
section.
Pervasive, right? At some point, this is going to be like a snowball effect. And I can't tell you when exactly that time is going to happen. I don't know when the analysts are going to, you know, pick up on this and go, geez, you know, this is a really big problem. And there's a massive opportunity. The TAM on this is what? This is a global issue.
Yeah, this is, and that's the issue. They only put the TAM today around the services and the hardware. They aren't valuing the software TAM yet. But when I look at the opportunity across the globe, look, think about that $30 billion, right? How do you take that $30 billion and make it $1 billion? The opportunity here is fantastic in terms of the spend, right? You could correlate that to a TAM one way or another, because they're spending $30 billion a year fixing the crap that they shouldn't be doing in the first place, right? The opportunity to turn that around exists now.
So are you excited, Pat?
I am, man. I'm here because I'm excited. I said this to Paige. I see so many companies, and 90% of them, they have no hope. That's an interesting idea, but it's not a market. When I sat down and went through all this with him, I was like, this is real. This is something that's happening. Jump on this bus. This is fantastic.
What is it? A $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that's passed. And Paige and I just kind of talked about it. It's probably going to wind up costing us 10 trillion. Because you can't do anything above ground without knowing what the hell's going on below ground, right?
Indeed.
The thing I like to allude to, Tim, and maybe this is where we kind of close things out is, and you can see the excitement we have. You can see what we're executing on. We're onboarding clients. You can see what's happening, not only are the other tailwinds in the industry as far as with the standards and the mandates, and the fact that this industry is going to go through a digital transformation, and we're well positioned. But think about this, and a lot of investors are in this position. So when I first raised capital and we went public a few years ago, it was at 40 cents Canadian. Then I did a subsequent financing of over $10 million, and it was at 40 cents Canadian. Now we know that, it's a tumultuous market and there's a lot going on, a lot of influencing factors, but the microcap market right now is way down, and we're caught up in that as well. I think today, Canadian, we're probably around 16 cents. Well, there was excitement in investing at Prostar at 40 cents on 2 subsequent financing, and we have continued to execute. The opportunity has even grown more. I've expanded on our executive management, and we are poised now to execute and capitalize on this market, drive sales, drive revenue, which obviously reflects in share price. There's never been a better opportunity to invest in this company.
So let's, I'm glad that you bring this up, because we take a look at the chart, and technically, it doesn't look great, right? It's been in a downward trend for a while, but I can tell you this is what I would call consolidation, right? It's basically trading within a box between, what is that, 24 cents. This is the MAPPF, which is the US symbol, right, on the OTCQX. And you're hovering, you've got a point of support, and then you've got this point of resistance. And the longer you build this out sideways, I call it a launching platform, right? It's just consolidating, and it's going to be like a coiled spring. And when it goes, it's going to go, and you're going to break that long-term trend. You are really close to breaking. It's going to break one way or the other. And I look at the fact that you've now brought Pat on. I look at the fact that you're adding logos, you're adding equipment manufacturers. They just changed what is considered survey grade. There's a lot of things that are happening in your favor. So if it's going to break, I believe it's going to break to the upside, and it's going to be the beginning of a new long-term trend, which is going to be the opposite of the other one. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'm not as smart as you, and I don't know all the trends and, where it looks like there might be an inflection point in consolidation, but I do know what's going on inside of this organization. And when I take a look at, where's a good place for me to invest my money? I'm looking at Prostar. matter of fact, this week, I bought.
I was
50
gonna bring that up. I just saw the filings.
Yeah, because I have to report it.
Right. You're
I'm an
buying,
insider.
the CFO is buying, the COO is buying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't blame you. I think that's fantastic to see.
I'm gonna continue buying. In fact, there's only so much I can buy. I can't go in there and just dump a bunch of money in there because it's going to spike the share price. I'm an insider. I have to report that I'm buying, and I have to buy a little bit here and a little bit there. Otherwise, it has too much influence on the share price. But I want everybody to know, yeah, I put my money where my mouth is. I've looked around at various investment opportunities, and I can't think of a better one. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
All right. Well, listen, I think that we can't have this this gap between our follow-ups. You know, as things start to, yeah, I just think news flow is going to be picking up more and more, right?
Yeah, I know, I agree 100%. Anytime you want to have a follow-up, just let us know. And by the way, for everyone out there, as I say, put your money where your mouth is, I always say the proof is in the pudding. Keep an eye on us because things they really are starting to ramp up. We're starting to onboard more clients. We've got more equipment manufacturers we're going to be integrating with. And yeah, as you can see from Pat, and we exude it. I mean, we're excited and we're passionate about what we're doing, and we know the future's bright.
Hey, Pat, would you be open to interviews as we progress here?
Yeah, man. Just get a note out my way and I'll try to make things work for sure.
Okay. The one thing that everybody is concerned about right now, since we're talking about the microcap and all that, is the need to raise capital. I mean, that is a big concern because in this market, in this climate, especially if you're a microcap, you're going to get screwed. I mean, it's I don't know how else to say it. Getting financing right now is not an easy solution, and that's what's got everybody spooked about. You got a rising interest rate environment, right? Inflation, all this stuff going on. And if they think you're going to have to raise capital, it's a concern, right? Where are you, Paige? And Pat? I mean, can you guys address that?
Yeah, I'll start out and then I'll have Pat elaborated on as well, because even within our own organization, people are always concerned about that too, right? But everyone thinks that, number one, doing a financing is negative. And I think that's the whole micro cap concept, because most of these companies, they don't go anywhere. So, all their revenue is based on financing, and then everyone just continues to get diluted. And then the more dilution there is and the more outstanding shares there are, then it impacts, on the share price. So, and I'm going to let Pat elaborate a little bit more on that. But, a lot of companies in their growth stages do capital financing because they're going to continue to grow, and they actually continue to do financings because they do want to continue to grow. But we have a healthy treasury right now. But I actually have, which may not be a different situation than some of these other companies, I have banks reaching out to me. Some of these are large venture capital firms that are reaching out to me that are like, we want to do a financing with you, which is different than having to go out and do a financing, especially where, as you mentioned, the market is right now. So I'm not one of these guys that beats around the bush. At some point, we're going to do a financing. Why? Because, and Pat will elaborate on it, right now, we're building a sales organization. I need to hire more SDRs, sales development representatives, and I also need to hire more salespeople. We need to significantly ramp up our marketing, not only in the United States, but globally, because as I mentioned, we're poised to capitalize on a market right now, but we're like the best unknown secret in the world. Like literally, when we talk to companies and we demonstrate what we're doing, sometimes their comment says, where the hell have you guys been? And how come I haven't heard about you? Well, we're a small company. We have 30 employees. We have a limited marketing budget. I only have a couple salespeople and SDRs. And as Pat alluded to, right now he has a formula in place and it's pretty simple. It's simple math. If we want to quadruple our sales, we could probably do it overnight. Well, why don't I do that? Well, I need to hire more SDRs and I need to hire more salespeople. That's actually our formula right now. I need to hire more salespeople, hire more SDRs, and then I have to fill up their sales pipeline, which means I need to do a significant amount of more marketing, not only in the United States, but globally. Well, that costs money and that's not in my budget right now. So we are actually sitting down and considering, should we raise money? Now, do I want to raise it at these prices? No, hell no, because I'm the largest shareholder. Trust me. If your investors think they get impacted by doing a financing, I can tell you it pales in comparison to how it impacts me. But I also have a fiduciary responsibility to this company, to all my shareholders, which includes myself. So I can assure you anything that we do will be based on increasing our share price, increasing our market penetration around the world, and growing this company to where we think it could be, which is still, in excess of $1 billion company. And that's our goal. And I know Pat feels the same way. And, Pat, maybe you could just quickly elaborate on this question as far as financing, because I know it's been a question that's even been brought up, internally.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, Page's mission for himself and the other shareholders is to build a fast growth software company, software as a service company. And that's where the real value comes, right? And right now, this is about owning the global market. He's got the most advanced product protected by the broadest patent portfolio. This is his market to own. And there will be continued investment. We've proven out the model that 2 SDRs can keep a single salesperson on 20 new appointments every single week, right? So if we continue to grow that, it will take investment. The good news is everyone that I've had the pleasure of speaking with is used to investing in technologies around this sector in general. And they get it. They see it. They know what's coming and they know what needs to happen. And they know that these guys lead that charge. So you've got a warm environment, I think, which is a little bit unique than almost any other software platform out there who's trying to raise money in a terrible time. When the time is right and Page feels like he needs to, and we're busting at the growth, the growth seams, I think it'll be a more receptive market than most see.
Okay.
Just real quick, Tim, and I don't mean to cut you off on that. But this is in line with the question you have. So I had an interview yesterday with a very, very large investment bank. I'm not going to mention who it is, but they have what's called an accelerator program. And it's their job to serve their investment community to find these smaller companies that have an opportunity to become very, very big companies. And they interview them all over the world and they narrow it down to 7. And then those 7 have the opportunity to go to Zurich in May and sit down with very sophisticated and wealthy investors throughout Europe, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. And their reputation is on the line. Well, needless to say, after I presented yesterday, I think there was about 14 people from all over the country that I was presenting to. When I was done, they said, pack your bags. We'll see you at Zurich. Because then they even said, they go, this is so easy to understand and what the problem is and how big it is. And they said, not only that, you're going to be talking to the European audience and everyone's going to know that if you think you got a problem in the United States, this is a much bigger problem in Europe and everyone's just going to understand it. So
it's an older world problem. Yeah, right.
It is. So it's also for everyone to know now that the product's mature and now that Pat is coming in, I have a lot more time on my hands where I can go out now and speak to the investment community. And I have the proof in the pudding. I can share with everybody, just like I'm doing today, where we are, what we've done, how we've executed, how the market is changing, what a big problem this is, the adoption we're starting to see, the mandates we're starting to see, the new regulations we're starting to see. So we're in a very good position to capitalize. And the more I can go out and talk to the investment community and I can convey this message, and share with them the opportunity to invest, you're naturally going to see the share price start to go up. And you're going to see that in the next couple months, because I'm going to be pounding the pavement. I've got to go all over literally the world now, because everybody wants to hear this story.
You know what's funny too is, I just think about the guys in the construction field. And a lot of these guys make, especially the superintendents, the guys making, calling the shots on the job, they make good money.
Yep.
And I mean, this is like such an easy thing for me. You go out on the site, you show them the software that blows their mind because it's going to save them time and money. And then you say, hey, by the way, it's a publicly traded company and it trades at 13 cents.
I know.
You can literally change these guys' lives, right? In more ways than one. This is such an easy thing to me, right? Buy the software, use it, save your company money, become safer. Oh, and by the way, buy the stock, because it's probably going to be worth a hell of a lot more than what it is today in about, I don't know. I don't want to call it, but this to me, for this thing to be sitting where it's sitting is a gift. And I'm not telling anybody to buy the stock. That's not what I do. I just simply present the story and say, look, this is the opportunity at hand. I look at the stock chart. I think to myself, it's only a matter of time before people start to understand what you have here. It is a need. It is not a want. It is a need. And it is the best of whatever's out there right now, because you're the pioneer and you've been doing this for a while. So this is an opportunity because of the overall markets and the turmoil that we're seeing there. This is a gift. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. I'm not telling you to buy the stock today. You don't have to, but at least put it on your radar, right? And there's the email address right here next to me. Investor relations, sign up and get investor alerts sent directly to your email. That way you just keep informed of what's happening with the company. That is my suggestion for everybody out there, right?
Oh,
Amen, brother.
we lost you there for a second, just so you know. There was a little bit of a
You froze actually, but Pat was still good. I think you lost me, but
okay, good. So
Guys, I got to go jump an airplane.
no
Am I
worries.
good
I know
to
you got places to be and people to see. So we'll see you soon.
take care,
all right,
guys?
Pat, nice meeting you.
Likewise.
On that note, Tim, even when I do my investment seminars, which I have several coming up, I always tell the audience when I get up there, I'm not here to tell you to buy my stock. I'm here to explain my story on my company and present to you information, and you can decide for yourself if this is a good opportunity or not. Simple as that.
Right. And Paige, it is. It's just a fucking great opportunity. And when people finally get it, it's gonna go, and you're gonna be standing on top of the mountain, like you said to me the other day. There's no doubt in my mind that's coming. I know it's coming. It's taking longer. It's frustrating. The market certainly isn't helping, but it's coming, man. Brother, it is coming.
We're the I always tell everybody humorously, I go, we're the normal 7-year overnight success story.
I'm gonna stop recording on this. Hold on one second. Thanks for doing this, Paige. Really, thanks for doing this.
No problem.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in to this follow-up interview with Paige Tucker, CEO of Prostar, ticker symbol MAPPF. If you enjoyed today's video, please do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, why not give us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.